So my name is Dejan Papic. I'm the Global Implementations Manager for our Digital Advancement Academies at Bentley Systems. And today I'll be talking about the BIM journey that Crossrail took in order to build this, to deliver this innovative project and the amazing railway. So first let's take a look at the Crossrail project, some details about it. So it's a railway that goes from east to west, connecting Heathrow Airport and Bristol in the west to Shenfield and Abbey Wood in the east. It's about 100 kilometers of overground rails with 21 kilometers twin-bore tunnels. That means 42 kilometers of underground rails. There's 9 major underground stations and 28 overground stations. So the railway will increase London's rail transit capacity by 10%, which is huge. And it will also halve the time it takes to travel from Heathrow Airport to Canary Wharf, which is again an amazing number. Some numbers associated with the project. So initially the project was supposed to cost £14.8 billion. Just not so long ago, that number was a little raised. There's 4.5 million e-documents that were stored in the system in the common data environment so far, with 2.25 million CAD model files stored. There's 800,000 assets to be tagged, more than almost 12,000 people working on the project, having access to the common data environment, 100 main contracts with another 200 smaller ones. As I said, 9 main central interchanges, 2 future infrastructure maintainers. That's a very important fact. There will be 2 organizations who will be operating and maintaining parts of Crossrail. And some of the benefits. So they envision Crossrail bringing about £42 billion of benefits to the UK, a huge number. 14,000 people were directly employed by Crossrail. There'll be 24 trains running per hour at amazing speeds. And just in the first year, they're expecting 200 million people to use Crossrail. Now that's huge. I mean, what's the population of the UK? I think about 50 million. So that's 4 times that. And the most important number, 1 world-class railway. So that's the mentality Crossrail went into the project with. That's the mentality they demanded everyone who worked on the project to adopt in everything they did. Health and safety, delivery, whatever. You name it, world-class was the number they were going for. And they, of course, had KPIs to measure their supply chains and their own people as well, looking at how they are achieving this world-class status. So whenever Crossrail speak about building the railway, they always say they're building 2 railways. So not just the physical one, but also the digital one. And it's actually the digital one that's helping them deliver the biggest benefits at this point. So this is how the their digital idea looks like, the digital twin. This helps them deliver during the project, the capital delivery of the project, but also during the operations and maintenance, and very importantly, also the users, the passengers. They'll have access to a lot of the data that maybe they don't have when using other assets, so it makes their journeys more pleasant. Looking at the delivery program, as you can see, it's quite long. At the moment we are here, nearing the end of 2018. So the project will be delivered in 2019, a few months after the envisioned end date. During the project delivery, it was impacted by quite a few things. In 2007, you probably all know this standard BS 1192 came out. Obviously Crossrail wanted to work in accordance with this standard, but luckily for them, a lot of their processes were already set out so they were in compliance. Of course, they needed to change some things, but they were so far ahead thinking that it didn't impact them in a huge way. And also, to be honest, they impacted the way the standard was written a little bit. In 2011, the government construction strategy was published. which demanded that all projects delivered after 2016, all centrally procured projects, are delivered in accordance with BIM Level 2 and its requirements. Of course, because Crossrail will be delivered in 2019, that means even though half of the project was already done, they still had to be in compliance. This, as you can imagine, has a huge impact on any project, of course, also on Crossrail. But the thing is, as I said earlier, Crossrail was so far ahead thinking, so innovative in the way they were delivering the asset digitally. They had actually a lot of things already implemented, and they needed to change certain things, but the impact wasn't as huge as it could be. And of course, the delivery, the invention of new technologies. So commercialization of touchscreen mobile phones and tablets. You know, as soon as a new technology comes out, you want to be able to use it. You want to be able to get the benefit that it can bring to your project in order to improve the efficiency, effectiveness. So Crossrail wanted to adopt the tablets and the mobile phones into their project delivery. They were very successful doing it. They actually collaborated with Bentley in developing certain apps that were able to, that allowed them to take that common data environment from the office to the site. An app now known as ProjectWise Worksite was actually developed in collaboration with Crossrail, tested on Crossrail. Contractually complex project, 100 main contracts, big contracts, with another 200 smaller one. As you can imagine, these all, many of them interface with each other. They affect the start dates, end dates, very complex environment to work in. Technically complex. In order to enable that world-class use, world-class journeys to the passengers, they had to install a lot of technologies in the tunnels, in the stations, and this made the project extremely technically complex. If we take a look at this small part of a tunnel, we've got 20 contracts and 10 contractors and JVs working on them. Not all of them at the same time, but many of them do work at the same time. And if you're not communicating, if you're not sharing information, if you're not collaborating in a better way, then you can imagine how many issues would occur. Changes in construction are something that happens quite often, and Crossrail certainly didn't want to have too many changes come up. Spatial complexity. So London, as you all know, is a very old city. There's thousands of years of history underneath it, from the Roman times through the Middle Ages, utilities from the 18th, 19th century, already existing tunnels for the underground, and many others. All of these are buried underneath there. If you don't know where they are, this is going to impact the way you deliver your project. At any point, you can come up to a buried old asset that you don't know was there, and it's going to stop your project. So Crossrail had to be certain about everything that's down there so they could deliver it right the first time, as they say. Another example of this is around Finsbury Circus. So we've got two major underground stations, Moorgate and Liverpool Street. We've got 3 major underground lines and an overground line. And we've got the post office tunnel, which hasn't been used in 100 years. So, you know, most people don't even know that it's there. How can you build such a huge railway as Crossrail, you know, if you don't know it's there? So Crossrail had to find all this information and take it, put it into their plans. This is a very popular term, threading the eye of the needle. It was part of the BBC documentary on Crossrail. As you'll be able to see, we are near the Tottenham Court, or underneath the Tottenham Court Road station. We've got the Northern Line and we've got the Central Line, and not very much space to build another line or another tunnel. So they could go way underneath, but that would cost them a lot. So they were looking for better ways to do that. And well, what they did was basically they fit a tunnel just about 60 centimeters above the Central Line and another 60 centimeters below the piles of the stairwell of the Tottenham Court Road. And this is very, it's not a very big distance, you know. And of course, no one will allow you to build in that way if you're not 100% certain in your information. Well, Crossrail were 100% certain. They were even so certain that they built this. The tunnel boring machine went here whilst the trains were going up and down Central Line and people were walking up and down the stairwell. So this is amazing bit of, this tells you what digital engineering enables you to do, if you have the right information, of course. So as I'm talking so much about tunneling, we had to touch upon the tunnel boring machines and the tunnels themselves. So you can see them here on this picture, huge structures, huge tunnels compared to people. These are the tunnel boring machines. They had 8 of them on Crossrail. You can see the directions they went to excavate those tunnels here on the map. And the interesting thing is, these tunnels did so much work. Of course, at the end of the tunneling, they were quite destroyed, let's say. So what they did was they buried them in place. They buried them in side tunnels near the Crossrail's main tunnels. And of course, for future projects, they need to remember that those buried assets are there, so they don't come up on them when they're building another railway, let's say. And all the materials that were excavated, as you can imagine, there was a lot of them, 42 kilometers of tunneling. So projects nowadays need to be very environmentally conscious. So what do you do with all that material? What Crossrail did was build Wallasey Island. So this is the largest natural resort, wetland resort built in the last 100 years, I think. They've populated with many endangered species. So basically, you know, they returned, they gave something back, you know, to the environment. So I think after this few slides, we all understand why we create data. One reason is definitely the legislation, because we're required to do so. And the other one is for making decisions. And these decisions can, of course, be during the project delivery, so during the design and construction. But the more impactful can be during the operations and maintenance. So the operations and maintenance part of the assets life cycle is much longer and can be much more expensive than the actual project. So we must be sure that whenever we are building an asset, we are able to hand over all the information to future operators and maintainers, which they need to be able to operate the asset in the smoothest way possible. So there's obviously a lot of information that's generated in an organization such as Crossrail, but from our perspective, from the BIM perspective, we are only really interested in the technical information. And that information is defined through the employer's information requirements, and it must be handed over to the future asset operators and maintainers. So traditionally, project delivery went something like this. You can guess probably which was the most popular mean of communication or tool of communication. Of course, emails. Just send everyone an email, but maybe people don't get an email, or maybe people forgot that they got an email, or maybe people are looking at an older email. So that just doesn't work anymore. So of course nowadays we're using something called the common data environment, where everyone deposits and takes out the information from, and they're sure that the information is latest and it's the right information and they can use it for their work. So the common data environment on Crossrail looked something like this. It's not a 3D model which you fill with information. It's not a single database filled with information. What it is a collection of best-of-breed databases which are integrated with each other, linked with each other, so you can mix and match information from different databases, put it together, report on it, use it for different purposes. As you can see, Crossrail used a number of different solutions to build their common data environment. I mentioned mobility when the tablets and the touchscreen mobile phones were introduced. And of course, they did a lot of analytics. They had a lot of dashboards to support management decisions. Of course, we associate data about an asset through something called asset tagging. We bring together the 3D models, the point clouds, photogrammetry models, various documents, textual data, etc., etc. The two labels, I guess, that you can see here were used on Crossrail, one to be put on the asset and the other one to be put on the space, I guess, where the asset goes. And they defined what the function of the asset is. So they didn't, in the future when they would be changing that asset, they wouldn't install a more powerful asset just because that one was available, but they'd install an asset that actually fulfills the function that that asset needs to fulfill. And of course, temporary works need to be tagged as well. I mentioned earlier the tunnel boring machines. You can see here, abandoned in place. That was an option with Crossrail, and that's what they did. Of course, we know there are many problems when we go between CapEx and OpEx. Handover is quite a huge pain when it comes to projects. Truckloads of paper documents are usually delivered to the future owner operator, and yeah, they just take them and don't know what to do with it. So digital project delivery will allow us to do that better, but the strategy must be in place first, and it must be a good strategy to enable us to do that. Even if we create a lot of this digital information, if we don't know how we will hand it over, or we don't know how the future operator will use it, there's really no point in creating that information. So if we are not careful, this might happen. The information handover team and the project. I don't know if, has anyone seen Austin Powers? You know it.
Watch out!
I'll stop it here. So that's handover if you're not careful, or if we are not careful. Crossrail tried to be very, very careful. Their strategy was in place quite soon, and it can be easily, I guess, explained through something like this. This is a bit old. I don't know if we still use iPods, but you can imagine an iPhone in its place. So whenever we are interested in some music, what do? We buy a song, or we buy a CD, playlist of songs, and we import it into our listening device, music device. And when we want to listen to that music, for example, for running, we build a playlist. For meditation, we build another one. For dancing, another one. Maybe for work, we've got a playlist, we build another one. What we don't do is we don't buy a new same song for each of the playlists. We just use the one that we've deposited on our device and use it multiple times, or surface it multiple times through various playlists. And that's the strategy Crossrail took when thinking of handover. So they collected the data in their common data environment, and as I mentioned earlier, there are two future operators and maintainers, London Underground and Rail for London. And what they wanted to do was keep all that data in one place and make sure both of the operators could access that data through different playlists that they needed, just about the assets that they were in control of. And of course, any interfacing assets. You can see it here. There's quite a few companies, organizations that are going to have to use Crossrail's data. And of course, all these organizations might have different asset management systems. So what Crossrail wanted to do was keep that common data environment in one place, in one piece, and enable anyone to reach it through whatever system they're using. And when someone makes a change through their system, everyone else will be able to see what that change is. As an alternative, if we cut all that great data in various pieces and gave it to different operators, whenever someone changed something about an asset, which maybe someone else is interfacing with, that change just wouldn't reflect in their system immediately, or maybe never at all. So there were many cost savings achieved on Crossrail. Our friends from Synchro were earlier talking about 4D, and 4D was something that Crossrail utilized heavily. I've included here a use case, an example of 4D use on Crossrail at Farringdon Station. So they developed a 4D model which cost them about £120,000. And through it, they were able to save over £8 million from the risk contingency pot. And that's a huge ROI. And you can see it here in a video. So you see here a tunnel being built and a portal, and then the tunnel boring machine comes and it stops and it stands still for 1 month. Tunnel boring machines are very, very expensive. You don't want them to stand still for 1 month. So this enabled them to plan in a much better way how the tunnel boring machine is how the project is gonna progress. There are, of course, many non-financial savings, safety, a huge topic on Crossrail, a lot of innovative things they did around it. So let's take a look at some of the innovations. So they, on Crossrail, they had something called Innovate 18. It was, I guess, their unit that was looking at how they can introduce innovations in the project and how they can motivate the supply chain to work with Crossrail in order to implement these innovations. And that Innovate 18 since grew into Innovate UK, which is now an organization that actually works in the whole UK, not just Crossrail project, which means it was very successful. So one of the technologies they trialed that way was augmented reality. You can see the Bechtel guys here trialing it and looking at the actual versus planned virtual reality to enable future operators or maintainers to visualize the asset in advance before they go to the site and on site, and also to have access to all the information they needed about the assets that they were going to inspect. On-site document verification, so all the 2D drawings that were printed from the common data environment on Crossrail, there was a data metrics code printed on them. What they could do was take their phone, swipe the code, and it would connect directly to the central system and tell them, this is the latest drawing, you can use it to build, or no, this is not the latest drawing, throw it away, throw it in the garbage. Seems so simple, but it saved them huge amounts of money on the project, a lot of misunderstandings. I mentioned earlier the Bentley's project-wise work site, or field supervisor as it was called at the time, was tested on Crossrail, and Crossrail utilized it to bring their office to the site, to bring the information from the electronic data management system to the site. They were testing Bluetooth low energy beacons. So some construction sites have sheep pens, they're called, where people can only use their mobile devices. So it's areas which are limited and they must go in there to use their device for health and safety purposes. So what Crossrail wanted to do was to use Bluetooth low energy beacons, which would detect any Bluetooth device and its location on the work site. And as soon as they get into a danger zone, the Bluetooth connection, it would shut down the device basically. The technology seemed very promising, but never really worked or took off. But you know, that's what must happen. You trial something, some things work, some things don't. You just need to have that mentality of innovation on a project. Of course, mobile GIS, smart boards, for many purposes, health and safety I mentioned earlier, virtual information structures, interlinking of project information, information handover approach I went into earlier. Health and safety, such an important topic in construction. I mentioned it a few times today. Let's look at an example. So what they did was they sent a guy down into the tunnels or into the stations. That person took a video of the location, and what they did was add 3D objects to that video. You can see one here. We just went past another one earlier. Why? So the people who went down there next day, they could visualize what their surroundings will be like, you know, make sure that they are aware of the environment they're going into before they go there. So what does BIM mean to Crossrail? It means the creation of virtual assets. So we're not building just the physical railway, we're building the digital as well. It's about integrating the data and integrating it for all stages of the life cycle. It's about collaborative management, and it's about that single source of truth. So there were many benefits achieved on Crossrail through information management, minimizing clashes, which reduce the wastage, faster collaborative approvals, which improved efficiencies, reduced information loss, improved safety, reduced program risk through 4D, better performance, collaborative model transfer from designers to contractors, innovative asset management strategies, and they, as I mentioned earlier, they had KPIs to rate all their supply chain. This was actually the first one. Red means you're not doing that great. Amber means, or orange means, it's still concerning, but it's improving. And green means you're good. But there's also a blue one, which you can't see here, and it's world-class. Goes with that Crossrail's mentality. 3 months later, after showing them the first results, this was the improvement. So it's about that constant improvement. And I've got a few more slides, but I think I need to finish. Yeah? Can I go on, or? Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that Crossrail utilized to improve their supply chain was the Crossrail Bentley Information Academy. They encouraged their supply chain. It was free to them to attend this academy. The surprising thing is Crossrail was so encouraging about everyone who worked for their supply chain to attend the academy. Even people such as administrative support, office personnel came to the academy. Why? When we are dealing with digital information, so information security is very important. Everyone who's even remotely involved with the project needs to understand certain things about the project, so you don't have any leaks or accidental leaks of information. So I've got a short video showing Crossrail speak about the academy.
Around the world, engineers and architects, constructors and owner-operators are using Bentley's software solutions to design, build and operate the infrastructure that sustains our economy and our environment. Together, we are advancing infrastructure.
Bentley software has helped us deliver a successful Crossrail. Together with Bentley, Crossrail have created the Information Academy. It's about creating an environment for people to work together really much more efficiently and effectively than they've ever done before.
It is the front of house for our Emirates. So we wanted to do something spectacular, something iconic, something everybody will remember.
We chose Bentley. There are not many competitors who could do a project on this scale.
We wanted to use technology, digital technology, to do it in the best possible way. For this, we use Bentley software.
We're very proud of the association with Bentley Sachs. It's allowed us to be a leader in the industry.
And more important is, the Bentley management has worked with us to help us feel that comfort to work with Bentley. And that is what is driving us.
Bentley, advancing infrastructure.
So besides working with major projects in such academies, we also work with the industry itself. So we hold different sessions, which we usually invite industry experts to come in and speak on the interesting topics in the industry. And they're free to attend to anyone. So at the moment, we've got academies in London, Houston, Dubai, Pune, Beijing, Singapore, and Sydney are coming up. So if you're ever in the neighborhood, you're very much encouraged to just drop in, you know. I'll leave this one out, and thank you.